Classic.
It is a classic. Both of us singing along to it.
We know the words. Everyone does. Yeah, I think.
How do you think I know the words?
I'm sure you heard it in Australia or wherever. You thought, what's that? What's that on the radio?
No. It's another one of those sort of pop culture touchstones because it was in Back to the Future.
It was, of course, where he's up on stage at the
Under the Sea dance.
Yeah. And follow my lead is what he says or something like that, doesn't he?
I love it. This is your cousin, Marvin Berry. You know that new sound you've been looking for?
Yeah, that's right. Of course it is. Yeah, I'd forgotten that.
It's really interesting to me how these songs do touch generations. I interviewed someone else a bit younger than us. She chose Chuck Berry as well. But that's because that was on the Pulp Fiction soundtrack.
My God, yeah. Well, rock and roll is obviously good for you. I think Chuck Berry died at the grand old age of 90 or something like that, kept him going. But yeah, I always thought he was terrific. And there's a documentary, I think, where Keith Richards is trying to get Chuck Berry to play in A or something like that. He says it's a good country chord, and Chuck Berry's resisting and saying, "I'm going to play it this way," and all that, and it's good fun. And speaking of the Stones, of course, I gravitated from the Beatles, and I still love the Beatles, but gravitated towards the Stones. You can't ignore them. Saw them several times in concert, and yeah, I've still got most of the Stones collection. And some years later, I had one of my girlfriends was Mick Jagger's PA. So there was a chance to actually meet the guys as well as they came into the UK and landed in a private jet at Farnborough. It was a very kind of, you don't know what to say because some of your heroes suddenly appear in person in 3D and you think, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to stand here like a polite person and step back and all that. But they were all smiling, very friendly and very nice, and they were fun times. But yeah, Stones. And then we talked about my first album, In-A-Gadda Da Vida, which as I say, I don't have a copy of it. And also in the States was the first concert I ever went to. And this was... Looking back now, I have no idea how we got the tickets. It was the Beach Boys, Madison Square Garden. We're talking 1973, 1974, thereabouts, or maybe a bit late. Maybe I was a bit younger, 14 maybe. But the Beach Boys was another kind of, at the time, influence, if you like, that people listened to. And it's slightly in the vein of Chuck Berry in a way. Surfing USA, and it was all the kind of Berry-ish chords that appear. But yeah, that was the first concert.
I want to come back to the Beach Boys, but I'd also like to hear a little bit more about meeting the Rolling Stones through your then girlfriend.
Well, I was very much on the periphery, but she worked for Mick Jagger. He has or had an office in London, and she would be in there helping out. But the reason she was hired in the first place is because she spoke French. And he has, or had again, a house in the Loire Valley, which is sort of built into cliffside, into chalk. And he used to hang out there with his family. And she got the job and kind of, helped organize travel between London and France. And Jerry Hall, I think he was married to at the time, so they would hang out there. And, so... Yeah, we started going out together, and I was there when she got the job, and she enjoyed it for a bit, and then I think after a year or so, she decided to do something else, and we split up anyway. It was a nice little glimpse, a little window into that kind of world which I knew nothing about.
Isn't it a funny little quirk that, given the line of work that we're in, we meet famous people all of the time, and just every now and again, you meet someone who was your hero or something like that, and you go from being a normal, capable person to a bit of a jelly. And I find that such a strange thing because they're all just people.
No, it's true. I've met some writers that I admire, and then I've become a sort of a gibbering wreck in front of them because I don't know what to say and I don't want to sound stupid, and then the moment's gone, and you think, I didn't really handle that very well. But you're right. You're right, yeah. In this business, and, we're exposed to celebs or whatever, and they come and go.
This reminds me of when I met Weird Al.
Weird Al Yankovic, who was a hero of mine growing up. And I had this opportunity to meet him, to basically tag along on an interview. And that was unusual because he was in New Zealand, and not very many people go there. But we go in, and, I'm unusually... tense.
I'd interviewed all sorts of celebrities up till this point, and I wasn't even going to be interviewing him or talking to him, really. It was just a chance to meet him and say hello. And I guess I was kind of hoping that I'd score a free ticket to the show. But, I go in, he's all in white, a big white suit, white shoes, looks great. And as I step forward to shake his hand, I step on his foot. Right on those white shoes, those perfectly white shoes. And it's one of those situations where I'm now holding his hand and my foot's on his foot and my weight is forward and I'm frozen in the moment where I'm shaking the hand of my hero and I can't remove my foot from his foot. But you just know that he hates this, and when I did release him, he's immediately looking at his shoe oh.
With an imprint of your shoe on his white shoe.
Just how did that happen? When have I ever stepped on somebody else's foot when I've shaken their hand? How? How did we come to this moment in time? Oh,
that was your Inspector Clouseau moment, it sounds like. Yeah.
God. It's just, I've always found it really strange how that sort of thing can happen.
No, yeah, I mean, you can lose physical coordination along with any kind of mental ability or agility that you had before because you're so overwhelmed. Or the first thing that you say is, oh, I'm not shorter than I thought, or whatever, But,
yes. Yes, I've had that said to me quite a few times.
Snap.
Yeah, go back to when I used to be on the telly, which wasn't for very long. I was only a presenter for a couple of years. I heard it every other day. Oh, you're so much shorter in real life. Every other day. Have you spent your fair share of time on camera?
No, I've never really. I've been on camera a couple of times when the reporter or the correspondent, for some reason, has been unable to appear. So I'm very much a sort of emergency, inflate when necessary kind of thing, and then I pop up. But I think, as you know, in the news business, in a way, it doesn't matter whether you're used to being on camera, whether you can string a sentence or two together. It's just that if you happen to be in the right place at the right time, they'll take you, they'll use you because you're there where the story is happening. And even just describing what you see around you is enough for the gods that drive our industry. But no, I've always been behind the scenes. I've always enjoyed that. I've never really wanted to be in front of the camera. I think you need quite a big ego to be in front of the camera and at presenting and whatever. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think you need to have a sense of self-importance because it helps drive you. Otherwise you would be feeling like you couldn't enunciate with confidence, I think, if you didn't have a little bit of sort of hubris, or whatever the word is.
For me, it was a lack of skill.
Yeah, but you could have learned on the job, couldn't you?
Well, that's what I did. I ended up, after a couple of years, I did learn on the job, and I ended up behind the camera because once I had some skills, that's where I gravitated to. But I just wanted to be involved, and the only thing I had was a bit of personality to throw in a direction. Mm-hmm. But I never had any fear of the camera, but I also didn't have much of an ego about it. But I worked with people who did, and sometimes that was very tense.
I can imagine.
Yeah, but I know what you're saying, and I sometimes wonder if I just had my head in the sand going into that moment.
Who knows, how we end up where we are, you turn left, you turn right, or whatever, and there you are.
Well, I never wanted to be on TV. I was working in radio. I was doing, I think, the drive show at the time. Mm-hmm. And my employers at the radio station said, look, there's an open call for presenters. We want you to go down and put yourself forward because we think it would be good for the radio station, essentially. Good for you, good for the radio station. PR. And I never wanted to do it. And we went in there and they paired us all off, male-female pairs. And right from the outset, the station manager and the producer of the show said, we don't want you, but we're short a person, so you're being paired together here, and we're going to go through this process of putting you on TV, and there's going to be a public vote. And so I think there were 3 or 4 pairs, and I showed total disinterest throughout this process.
But what an opportunity, though.
I just didn't care. I just wasn't interested. And anyway, went to public vote, and me and this other girl they didn't want, won by a landslide.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was that. So, yeah, that.
So, what your family called in, did they? Or?
No, I wouldn't have told them. No. But it was just one of those things that happened, and so I ended up presenting student variety television for 2 years.
Fantastic.
And it was the time of my life. I had the time of my life.
I'll bet.
Which is why I ended up gravitating towards television. Like, is this what this is? Is this how this is? You can do whatever you want and have fun all the time? I'm going to do that.
Did you become like a chick magnet?
No, not really. No.
There he is. That's him.
No, I really didn't. It was one of the... while I was down there, I actually won an air guitar competition.
Ah, okay. I can see it.
Yeah, I got more attention from that than being on the telly. But it was a weird time. It was a lot of fun, and I did think television was going to be like that forever, just having fun and having a laugh all the time. But our last track was Chuck Berry. Where do you want to go to next?
Well, I mean, I think the Grateful Dead were a very big part of my life because I grew up with people who kind of liked that kind of hey man, far out kind of stuff. This was the kind of the time it was. So the Grateful Dead were always a band that you occasionally hear them now, but they are dinosaurs, and most of them have died. But the Grateful Dead, Trucking was probably the first song that I really enjoyed, and it's from an album called Europe 72.